Everyone. Thank you for coming today. Today I'm talking about hedge riding, experiencing the liminal between witchcraft and animism. My name is Nathan M. Hall. I am an author with Llewellyn, of course. My new book is called Path of the Moonlit Hedge, and you can find it on the Llewellyn website. Right now, they're running, during LlewellynCon, they're running a great promotion where you can get 35% off most of the items on their website with code LLCON23, and that goes through June 27th. So take advantage of that if you can. I have also left at the top of the chat, if you scroll up, you can see a link to my Beacons website where you can find the first chapter of my book available for free. So if you want to check me out before you buy, it's there for you. Just go and download it. Thank you. So this is about hedge riding and hedge witchery in the sense that not necessarily in the sense of dealing with plants and herbs and herbalism and things like that, but more in the sense of crossing the hedge. I do practice a bit of green witchcraft myself, but for the intent of this workshop, it's going to be about crossing the hedge and meeting with spirits and ancestors, deities, and whatnot. This is all about how I sort of decided to blend my animistic worldview with my practice of witchcraft. I would say that if we're going to be the change that we need in this world, we need to adopt a more animistic viewpoint of the world, and in doing so, we change ourselves, and we can awaken those around us in the way that we live, in the way that we lead. So, by adopting a more animistic worldview, we change how we interact with the world because we begin to have more respect for the beings, the other than human beings that we interact with. I would say I've been an animist personally from a young age. I think all children are born animists, and it's sort of trained out of us as we age and as we experience more and more with our overculture, which tends to be more materialist and more monotheistic. Whether or not that's how you personally live, it's the culture that we're living in. So it's, we're bathing in it essentially. But yeah, so I grew up as what I would now identify an animist. I would never have known that term as a child. I just grew up interacting with and speaking with spirits of nature, ghostly presences, and things like that. I grew up in a what I would consider to be a very haunted area, and by literally haunted as in spirits and ghosts. My hometown is presently the population is around 600. I no longer live there, but I go back and visit every year. And it was built on top of a coal mine, an active coal mine, and the coal mine has since been closed down. So there's this sort of heart wound in the soil of where I grew up, and I think that there's something about that attracts spirits, and that the earth itself is sort of resonating a wound that leads to odd things like hauntings, and there was definitely spirit contact and contact with like shadow or phantom large cats where I grew up, as well as like every house that I that I lived in had a ghost or spirit haunting it. So it was having that experience as a child and growing up fairly agnostic meant that I sort of created my own worldview or experienced the world as maybe humans were more intended to do. Let's see. So, witchcraft is a path that works with spirits, whether these are the disincarnate spirits of the once living or the conscious presences within a plant, bone, stone, or other curio, matters very little. This is a quote by Storm Fairy Wolf from his book Betwixt and Between. Um, and I think what Storm is, to just sort of paraphrase or rephrase what he's saying is that we live in a world of spirits, and we only need to recognize that they're there. It doesn't, regardless of where they're originating from, they're all there. They're all very present, and we need to open ourselves up and sort of allow ourselves to interact with them. So you may have heard this term reenchantment. It's been around for a little while. You may have heard of like reenchanting the world or reenchanting humanity. And I like this term. You may have also heard rewilding. Re-enchanting tends to be more used on the spiritual end. Rewilding tends to be used more on the ecological end. I like these terms a lot, but I feel like there's something wrong about them, or wrong in our understanding of them, maybe. Um, the implication is that there is a disenchantment that has happened to the world. That maybe people feel like because the world is going through a climate disaster right now, or that humans have changed the landscape and the world so much that somehow the world has been sullied or disenchanted. And I would argue that there's nothing further from the truth, that no matter what humans do to this planet, and no matter what humans do within nature, we are still at the whims of the wild, and we are still at the whims of nature. Um, so the disenchantment, I think, has come from us, and the true reenchantment needs to happen within ourselves. The world is already thoroughly enchanted, uh, and we have removed ourselves from communication with the world. So I think that at some point in our history, probably like more towards like the industrialization, but maybe before that, we started to cut off our communication with the world. We started to adopt that more materialist sort of mindset, where things that were not definitively provable with experiment um, were just cast away. Like if you could not say this phenomenon consistently happens under these conditions, then it was, well, we're suspicious of that, and we think that it might not even exist at all. Um, so how do we open ourselves back up to reenchantment? And of course, my answer would be animism. For those not familiar with the figures in this slide is actually a still from the movie Princess Mononoke. Princess Mononoke is a film with a lot of animist underpinnings in it. These creatures are called Kodama, or Kodama, and they are essentially forest spirits in the movie. The studio that makes it is called Studio Ghibli, and if you want to find more movies that are sort of in an animist framework, that's a good place to look. People who are familiar with Studio Ghibli already know this. um, so, what is animism? In my like day job, background, past, whatever, I've done a lot of coding. So for me, like as I see it, animism is sort of the source code of the universe. Um, it is how everything it is the actual beingness that we are all in. Everything from the smallest atomic particle to the largest supernova, I feel, is imbued with spirit and with a sense of maybe consciousness. So everything is inspirited. You can befriend anything. You can bargain, cajole, plead with anything, and you can create relationships with everything around you. And this is the first steps towards adopting animism as a worldview or philosophy, is beginning to have those relationships and opening yourself up to those relationships. Even if you're not someone who has a psychic bend or doesn't believe that they have a psychic ability, I think everyone does. But you can still develop relationships with the non-human beings in your environment by acknowledging them, by feeding them, watering them, whatever, and you can begin to have a relationship. On a more psychic level, you can begin to communicate with these beings, and which I think is a helpful and especially for people who are considered themselves to be witches, a very useful thing for all of your work. So what animism I feel like can bring to the world is that greater sense of healing and greater sense of respect. Because if you start developing relationships with things that were before a inanimate object, a rock, a river, a mountain, if you start having respect and communicating with that object or that being, it's harder to treat it badly. It's harder to do things, simple things like litter, or and in so doing, we open ourselves up to more healing, because we are healing the rift of othering that we've gone through as humans to get to the place that we are right now. So, like I said before, you may already be cultivating a relationship with another non-human being without even really recognizing it. Plant life, if you have any plants, house plants, they, do you feed them? Do you water them? Do you talk to them? Same thing for your pets. Do you interact with them? Do you love on them? Do you, these are purely, these are very animistic tendencies that everyday people have, and it's gets to the point of that we are not so far removed from an animistic past as we might believe. So I really love this slide. I included it because I feel like it really illustrates, what an animist worldview kind of looks like. You can see, all of the trees have different spirits inside of them. There's animal spirits, and there's like a snake spirit in the lake that might be some sort of water being, water spirit. There's some in the front left. There are what I would guess to be like spirit, like ancestor spirits. And then in the background, you can see like this blue exploding cloud thing, which to me it might be like a nature spirit, a spirit of some sort of weather phenomenon, or even a deity. This painting is by Peruvian artist and shaman Pablo Amaringo. If you want to look him up, he from my personal take, I would probably not anthropomorphize as much as he has in this painting. I think it's more in communicating the idea than him actually seeing like human-like spirits in these plants and trees and whatnot. So, but I do think, and I do interact with anthropomorphic spirits, but it's not every spirit is anthropomorphic, human-like. Um, and as you've probably been able to tell, it's really hard to talk about animism without getting a little bit poetic in our language and in our expression, and it's because of all of the contradictions that exist within an animist worldview. It leads to things like like a magical, almost like a magical realist sort of experience of the world. Um, so animism is sort of is forcing us or asking us to create a new language because our existing language has failed us in Western industrialized cultures, especially. So much of our animist expressions and language have been sort of weeded out over the centuries, and it requires us to speak poetically where our very literal way of expressing ourselves has failed. So our worldview is materialist. For materialists, we seek answers. Everything is something to be solved. Um, and for an animist, there are questions and answers, and then there's just existence. Sometimes things are the way they are because the spirit wants it that way, and there's no like answer to that. You just experience it. Um, Not everything is a question that needs an answer. Sometimes you just have to live the experience and maybe attempt to interact with the spirit that you've made contact with in your experience. Um, and sometimes the answer is simply that we are part of the goddess. That's that universal energy. It's the unifying spirit. The in witchcraft, we talk about sometimes the like the big G goddess. She's the universe. She is the all. We are particles within her, all interacting and all playing out in the spirit of her. So in that unifying spirit, we're all one. We have to attend to. We also have to attend to the inverse of that idea, which is something. This is part of the contradictions of animism, where it's while we are all unified in one, we are also playing out uh, a sort of story between all sorts of different spirits. And so this photograph is from someone named Nona Limon. She is a photographer who creates a lot of really witchy uh, scenes and things like that. You can follow her on Instagram, I think. She lives in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but this kind of gets a little bit to what I'm, the other side, where as as peace and love and unified with everything I am on one side, on the other and I'm I like the dark, I like the witchy, I like this vaguely spooky, I don't know, whatever. But so, and in this animism is represented in this as well, because animism is also nature, with everything that entails, including sex and death, birth and terror, love, hate. Um, it's humanity becoming a little bit more wild, a little bit more feral. And to paraphrase something from my book, the witch is the wild world given voice. So part of our job as witches, or as some of us, is to communicate what the wild world is telling us to other humans who can't hear it. Um, we have to continuously re-enchant ourselves, rewild ourselves, and listen to the messages that we're receiving from spirits when we do take that crossing of the hedge. And we need to be, when we come back, we need to be advocates for the forgotten. We must become them in some ways. Um, so we have to become advocates for the strip-mined mountain, and to do so, we must become like the howling mountain crashing down on humanity. To become advocates for poisoned water, we must become the flood. Witchcraft is a healing journey, but it's also a dangerous one, and witches should be a little bit scary for the people who come to us and for the people who we come to. Not because we are inherently threatening, but because we represent something wild and untamable. And that spirit is something that we need to reinvigorate within ourselves to make contact with the natural world again. Because we cross boundaries where no one else dares to go. So, why would you cross the hedge? Some of the reasons that people embark on this is for healing, your own as well as others. I would say that if you are going to embark on actually crossing the hedge, doing the spirit work, to start working on yourself beforehand, to make sure that you don't become injured in the process. This is a practice that takes a long time to develop, and you need to be careful and take baby steps. And on the other side of it, for bringing back healing for others, we can help others who maybe have ancestral trauma, or they need information that they're not capable of finding. That's the sort of work we can do for others. Um, you can also cross the hedge for spirit contact. So to gather information and partner with different spirits for your mutual benefit. It's there's a lot of possibility there, and especially if you work closely with your particular bioregional ecosystem, there are a lot of spirits that you can encounter. There's a lot of plant life and vegetation wherever you are, whether it's in the city or a desert, or where I am in South Florida, in sort of an urban area that's also very close to the wetlands of the Everglades. Um, Other reasons: ancestral contact, as I mentioned, making healing your own ancestral, any ancestral healing that may need to be done with members of your ancestral line, or to make contact with deity. If you want to have a closer relationship with your deity, crossing the hedge and doing that spirit work is very powerful. And one of the other reasons is to journey to the Witches Sabbat. The Witches Sabbat is a storied sort of almost a tale or fable, where witches would gather, and you would gather with your coven, or familiars, spirits that are friendly or allied with you, and maybe perhaps to meet the Lord and Lady uh, of the Sabbath, and in the Christian parlance, sign the black book of the of the devil or whatever. Um, I think that there are beings that certain people would refer to as devils, but I don't think that they quite. I think of them as nature spirits, and usually as sort of like leading like a nature spirit in an area that sort of, I don't know, maybe in the like court sort of sense of leading. Um, so for me, I practice all of these things. These are all part of my hedge riding, hedge crossing, hedge walking, what have you. And if you decide to do it, I would say it's a great place to go and encounter the spirits that you want to work with. Ask them if they would like to work with you. This can be plant spirits, from the herbs that you use in your spells, to the stones that you use, to local nature spirits or folkloric spirits that may exist in your area. But just I would recommend that if you do any pacts or deals, that you take you set some boundaries going into it. That you don't allow any spirit to cross any boundaries that you wouldn't allow a human to cross. If somebody comes to you and does something that you don't like, your first reaction should be, I don't care for this. Please leave me be. And don't be afraid to withdraw from them and cross the back through the hedge. So that is, I've got about 5 minutes left. I saw a bunch of stuff going through the chat, but I didn't get a chance to read it. So, but I'll see if there are any questions in there that I can answer really quick, or if you want to restate them quickly. Like I said, we've got about 5 minutes. Yeah, hurts to watch human infestation hurt her and her children. That's a good good point, Karma. And there's a lot of what I feel like I do in my personal witchcraft is witnessing, and I feel like there's a definite importance for witnessing what's happening in the world, and simply doing that, because so few humans are in that mindset where they're watching things happen, but they've got their lives and things to do. But witnessing the whatever degradations or felt traumas or hurts that are impacting the world, I think is a very vital part of witchcraft, because we need to be there to witness maybe some of the spirits maybe moving beyond our inhabited world. In the case of um, animals that go extinct or plants that go extinct, etc. So somebody says, Laurel says, define hedgeriding, please. Exactly what is it? So hedgeriding, as I have defined it, is when you are crossing over the spirit boundaries to interact with spirits, whether they be familiars, plants, animal spirits, ancestral spirits, deities. It is moving through what we call a liminal space. Liminal meaning spaces that are in between. So spaces like where the ocean touches the shore, where the mountains touch the sky, where we meet with the forest, on the edge of the forest. These are all liminal spaces, and we can use them as we can sit within them, or we can move through them, both physically and spiritually, in order to make contact with the other side. Let's see. Looking for other questions. There's a lot of great conversation in the chat. I'm looking forward to scrolling back through it and reading it all. I think, let's see. I think that I'm just going to call it right there. We've got about 2 minutes left in the presentation. So thank you all so much for coming and listening to me. And don't forget to check out the LlewellynCon sale on the website with the code LLCON23. You can get 35% off purchases on the website. And also, don't forget, if you'd like to check out my book, Chapter 1 is available for free. It's at the top, very top of the chat. It's beacons.ai/moonlit hedge.